Oh boy, my god complex is flaring up again. I haven't led a group of people since the last SimCity video, and let me tell you, that actually went better than expected. We had random fires. There were at least 5 times Godzilla stopped by, and we're not even in Japan, you know? Freaking Toho had to make 5 Godzilla movies in the town of Doe's Nuts. I mean, seriously, it was ridiculous. Well, anyway, I'm overdue, and more importantly, I'm overdue for playing a specific set of games, the Actraiser games. It's been over a year since I beat the last one, and I never beat the second one. We need to right those wrongs right away. So, on to the first one, Actraiser. For personal story time here, not a lot of people know that this is one of my favorite SNES games ever. It's definitely in my top 5. Not only would I watch my brothers play it back in the day when it was relevant, but on the rare chance I actually got to play, I remember doing okay. I also remember beating it on original hardware, but you're asking me to remember stuff from 25 years ago or more? My memory gets pretty hazy until I turned about 7, so I may not have beat it, but I definitely beat it now. Little Bran very much enjoyed a very specific part of the game, but adult Bran has grown to appreciate the entire thing as a package, so there you go. A few minute details before we go in here. The game came out in November 1991, making it an early SNES game, 3 months after the system launched. It was developed by Quintet and published by Enix. Yes, back when there was Square, and there was Enix. And it sold over 600,000 copies, not making it a blockbuster, but it did do pretty solid. That was a pretty big chunk back in the day, so... Now, on to gameplay. We may as well start with the obvious here. This game is known for splitting 2 distinct gameplay styles. So it's like you're getting 2 games in one. So not only is it fine entertainment, but it's a really good deal. It's got side-scrolling action. It's pretty easy to just pick up and play these. It's like a slightly harder version of Mario, I guess I would call it. Limited health with semi-generous health pickups. We don't want to forget about this one. And then later boss fights simply become a numbers game. Like, say, okay, the boss has like 50 health and I have 25. So as long as I take down 2 of his health chunks for every one that I take down, you know, whatever. But the early game is quite intense, since you don't have a ton of health, you know, to begin with. So you really have to strategize and play it out. You would get separate magic points for casting magic, but of course I had to save all my magic for later usage in the game. Your reflexes are very important here, as things tend to move a bit faster than I would expect. This game moves pretty quick. Of course, I've gotten used to the weightiness of Castlevania, so, you know, whatever. And there, I mentioned Castlevania. Each part of the world has 2 side-scroller levels, and how you do these levels has a direct impact on the other style of gameplay, stick-building action. Yes, this is the part that thrilled Little Bran. You know, big shocker there, right? The final score you get in the side-scrolling stages dictates how big your town can get, so it's a min-maxer's dream. You know, anytime you want those numbers to be big, you have to feed the first set of numbers to get the second set of number even bigger, you know? So, however, max population density is not necessary to complete the game. It just gives you more HP and MP, making the final levels, you know, even easier. These city building phases are also home to some combat and plot advancement. After beating the first side-scrolling phase in a new area, you help the town develop by taking care of the demons that fly around, and you also perform miracles. Miracles include causing natural disasters, which is kind of a weird miracle, and bestowing things from other towns in a form of spiritual communism. Different spells are also bestowed by towns, though those are one-time usage. That's why I saved my magic spells for the end of the game, is because whenever you use one, you don't get it back, and you don't know if another town is going to give one to you or not. You also get to pick your progression in the world map by flying your floating palace around to the next spots. We'll get into that floating palace and how it fits into the plot a little later. This is kind of like Mega Man, where you get to pick which boss you want to fight. And also like Mega Man, there is a suggested stage order, and the game is pretty heavy-handed about its suggestions. So, the graphics. What else can I say but pretty good? The lead character has a strong presence. Enemy design looks anywhere from satisfactory to pretty awesome. Level design looks good, and there's no obnoxious black lines around everything. The town buildings are quaint, you know, and a really nice thing to look at in regards to the detail of the towns is their external design. The building's external design also fit in with the geographical area around them. So, you're in a desert, you see tents, you see the nice stone buildings, like the adobe mud shacks and all that. You're up north, you see the old Victorian hotels. It's a very nice touch. Observing the citizens is quaint, again, I guess. And overall, the game is very pleasing to look at, which is more than you can say for a lot of games. Marching on to the audio, it's got good sound effects. I wouldn't say it's fantastic. Destroying enemies is quite satisfying. You'll definitely know when you pick something up by this ridiculous item pickup sound. It's a loud volume. The one "ha" sample that's yelled while swinging the sword does get a little annoying after swinging the sword for the 400th time. But it's not as annoying as a lot of other games. The town notification tones are pretty unique. I don't think I've heard anything like this. And you get to hear the tinking noise of the hammers whenever they seal off the demon lairs, which is a nice touch, because usually you're off doing something else. So you wonder, man, did the townspeople get to sealing those demon lairs? But anyway, this game also has great music. As a matter of fact, that is what most people seem to remember about this game, is that the soundtrack was fantastic. The music always seems to fit the situation. It's also great to listen to on its own, possibly the greatest reward I can give to video game music. The sound fonts or the instrumentation itself isn't all that notable, but what they did with what they had was nothing short of amazing. Alright, now it's time for our plot synopsis here. The game starts you off talking about how Tanzara, at least for the North Americans, was beat by you, the Master, again for the North Americans, before the game begins. During your deep sleep for restoration, though, Tanzara rose up and divided the land into 6 continents and spread evil through the usage of his lieutenants. There really is no major plot thread to go through here. Basically, you go around the world, cleansing the land of evil, and fostering ground for civilization to grow. As mentioned before, each continent has 2 side-scrolling levels, one to cleanse the land and the other to crush the lieutenant. In crushing the lieutenant, you also solve the town's problems. Along the way, the Master gains HP, magic points, health points, magic points, new spells, power-ups from the people, and all this. There is a boss rush before the final confrontation with Tanzra, which is the final boss. For the uninitiated, a boss rush is when a game will feed you one boss fight right after the other, with no chance for leaving. The devs decided to not refill your health after every boss, but this increased difficulty is accounted for since you have more HP than what you fought the boss with the first time, and chances are you found more lives, but prepare to lose them here though, is basically what I'm saying. This is where I use the only spell in the game that matters, the Magical Stardust. Beautiful. The Tanzra boss fight is pretty easy. You lose the ability to cast magic, but you gain a ranged sword attack. What is this, Zelda? Anyway, this is great because you can stand really far away and focus on dodging his magic attacks, which home. That's great. But look at that health bar though, bro. I mean, look at that thing. That's ridiculous. When that valiant and heroic music starts playing after Deathheim though, after you beat the final boss, the dopamine rush, at least to me, was pretty fantastic. The angel that follows your commands takes you around the world and shows you all the positive things that you did for them. Just in case you forgot. We also get preached to about how people believe less in the Master as time goes on, and cultures advance, and the want for the Master to even yearn for a time when the people no longer need his help, maybe. And that's the end of the game. You save the world, you go on, and people no longer need you. Which is a great way to end the game. Let's discuss those regional shenanigans though. You may remember earlier when I said the main antagonist is called Tanzra, and the lead protagonist is called the Master, in North America at least. Nintendo of America had a very strict policy when it comes to content that could be deemed as offensive. As in, nothing overtly offensive. This includes religion. The overt anti-offensive initiative only applied to things on the literal sense, though. So all things potentially religious were removed from the Japanese version. The Japanese version had Stars of David, the protagonist's name was God, and the antagonist's name was Satan. So the Stars of David would show up on monsters' lairs. The character you play as, known as the Master in North America, was known as God in the Japanese version, and so on and so forth. The lieutenants stayed exactly the same, though, since they were based on Greek mythology and Hinduism. Nothing really all that offensive about centaurs and the Egyptian mummy heads and so on and so forth. There are some gameplay shenanigans too. They added the professional mode for North Americans after beating the game, which is just all the side-scrolling levels one after the other. They also made the games just a bit easier. Magic takes less points to use, and the time limit is increased. The time limit is increased. I didn't even know these levels were timed. They were already pretty generous with the timing. They took the changes to another level, though, in the European version. So they built the European version based on the edits that were made from the North American version. The action mode is immediately available. It is the professional mode from back in the North American version. Only it's readily available without beating the game. They also added difficulty levels. Easy, which is the North American version. Medium, which is the equivalent to the Japanese version. And hard. How could it get harder than the Japanese version? Well, anyway. Final impressions. I loved it. It blazes new trails, not by creating any form of new gameplay, but by refining established norms and mashing them up into something that isn't an unholy amalgamation. So there you go. Actraiser review. Alright, now it's on to Actraiser 2. I've known about this game since it came out, but really had no drive to play it. I'm pretty sure this game is responsible for a little bit of property damage at my parents' old house, due to the kiddos smashing the walls after losing at this. I'm not exaggerating either. The property damage is very real, and the difficulty is very real. I got some more factoids, though, before we dive in. It came out in North America in 1993, November, making it a mid-cycle release. Published by Enix again, but the EU release was published by Ubisoft. Yes, sir, that one. It only sold 180,000 copies, though, worldwide, so this one didn't do as hot. Alright, so, on to the gameplay. Well, let's get a look at the front of the box, shall we? 100% pure action and excitement. I mean, I'm no mathematician, but whenever there is a quantified game, say that's 100%, and you have to fit 100% more of something in a quantifiable number, then that means something else has to make the cut. But maybe they just doubled up on the game. Okay, I'm gonna get to be able to build a city after this. Okay, maybe they make you wait until after the second act to build a city. Okay, city. I'm not gonna get to build a city yet. Yes, in a move that still blows me away over 20 years later, they gutted the city sim portion of the game. What were they thinking? I'll admit that I don't like it, but I'll have further thoughts closer to the end of the section. Also, did I mention how hard this game is? I set this up on easy because I'm a North American baby that needs everything handed to him, and I still got my ass stomped. Seriously, it took about 6 hours to beat. On easy. With the comforts of playing an older game in the 21st century. It's almost unfair. Almost. Actually, no, hang on. Let me tell you about one boss in particular that is just a big pile of dookie. This is Mystical. He's a slot machine, out for vengeance. He spins his wheel of attacks around and do whichever one it lands on. These homing missiles are bullcrap, of course, but the real pain in the ass is the stopwatch. Castlevania fans rejoice, I get to say it in context now. Only you're the one losing this time. He actually freezes the fight for 8 seconds and will spawn at least 2 attacks during this time. So he doesn't freeze, but you do, and you can't do anything about it. And suddenly I have sympathy for the 2 or 3 enemies that I use the stopwatch against in my Castlevania tenure. But anyway, like its predecessor, stage order is not all that important. As a matter of fact, it's less important because you don't have any interweaving plot lines between the towns. So there you go. Now on to the graphics. This game is gorgeous. This game looks amazing. Our lead hero here looks almost exactly like Miles O'Keefe. Environments are amazing. Every enemy looks amazing, even the mundane ones like these fish. The world map is a little less detailed, but you're not spending a lot of time here anyway, so... And while we're on this, why do we even need the Flying Fortress at all anymore? Your actions are definitely less visible on the world map at large, so you don't feel as close to the world as you did in the first one. Why not just go full Mega Man and offer a stage select wheel? It would be faster. But anyway, sound design here is different, but I would call it as good as the first one. This music takes a step back because the songs feel a bit more subdued than they need to be. But the new world map theme and the ending song more than make up for this. Some would argue, though, that this is a good thing since Actraiser 2 has a slightly more depressing feeling than the first one, but pick your potion, I guess. There is a lot of sound effect reusage in this game, but the new sound effects are great. And this death scream in particular is quite good. The plot here is loosely tied to the first game. So loosely, in fact, it's kind of a hot-button issue as to whether the second game is a sequel or a prequel to the first game. So it's like George Lucas, but you get to pick on what side George Lucas is. But anyway, the game starts off with battling the final boss from the first game, Tanzra. The wall of text that follows tells how Tanzra was banished from heaven after leading a rebellion against the Master. They could have just changed Heaven's name to the Overworld if we're just still allegorizing the Bible here. Tanzra's second round of lieutenants are demonized versions of the deadly sins. All 7 of them. Again, no big plot summary here, you just go around the world and fight all these demons. After this, the Tower of Sins rises up from the desert floor, where you go through the level. Then finish off with a boss rush. Now this boss rush blows. You never level up in this game, so all forms of equaling out from the first game do not apply here. I hope you didn't die through all those other 14 stages. After this, you fight Tanzra. Once again, you lose your magic, but once again, you get a ranged sword attack. The boss bar is about on par with the first game, just not graphically represented in the same way. Your attacks do less damage, but it's roughly proportional. You also get about the same ending as the first one. Technology and culture advance to a point where they don't need you anymore. So, on to my final thoughts about Actraiser 2. Are you expecting me to rage because I can't build a city? Oh no, I seem to be unable to build a city. What am I going to do? Well, there you go, there's your rage. The inability to build a city is actually counteracted by the difficulty and the vast improvement in the combat mechanics. You can down thrust your sword on this one, and this move is ultra powerful. Not only do the attacks go faster, but the attack itself is stronger. Also, the only magic spell that matters in this game is the fire bombs. They do double the damage and hit faster. Literally no other magic spell matters. Also, it's worth noting that I didn't even know there was magic in this game until I read the manual, which is a residue of old game design and makes the manual relevant. Like, if this was a newer game, there would have been a magic casting tutorial. There are just a ton of these little tricks that the speedrunners eat up in this game, like seriously. All you have to do is punch in Actraiser 2 speedrun and click any number of games done quick to learn all the tricks. So the game is not as bad as the knee-jerkers made it out to be, but the sales figures kind of speak for themselves. So there you go. Scratch another one off the review bucket list. Hopefully my god complex kinda doesn't flare up again. It gets kinda nasty.